Good evening, everyone. The time right now is 8:30, and a lot has happened since the polls closed and even over the past 15 minutes. Thanks so much for staying with us for your Super Tuesday election coverage. I'm Lena Tillett.
And I'm Chris Lovingood. NBC has now called several major races we're all watching closely in North Carolina. In the presidential race on the Republican side, Donald Trump is projected to win our state over Nikki Haley and President Biden for the Democrats, but no surprise there.
We now also have calls for the governor's race on both sides. On the Democratic side, the Associated Press has called it for Attorney General Josh Stein, a commanding lead there. On the Republican side, NBC News has called it for Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson. And we have crews at both campaign headquarters tonight. Let's begin with Aaron Thomas with the Robinson campaign in Greensboro. How are they feeling, Aaron?
So, Lena, as you can imagine, this crowd of more than 200 people here at the Corey Convention Center, they are fired up. Many of them gathered around this stage, waiting for the man of the hour, Mark Robinson, to come make remarks. Now, we did speak with Mark Robinson's campaign manager. I asked when he'll be giving remarks. He said sometime very soon. We do want to be very clear that the State Board of Elections, they're still tallying up votes at this hour. I can tell you at last check, Mark Robinson has about 63% of the vote. His competitors, Dale Folwell, have 19% of the vote, and then you have Bill Graham, who just conceded with 17% of the votes. About 221 precincts have reported their election results at this point. I want to send things over to Eric Miller, who's actually covering Josh Stein. He is the Democratic challenger seeking a nomination for governor. Eric?
Yeah, Aaron, Josh Stein actually has an even more commanding lead in his race than Robinson does. We still have less than 10% of precincts reporting here, but right now 72% of the vote is coming in for Stein. Stein, of course, over top of four other challengers in this race, most notably former North Carolina Supreme Court Justice Mike Morgan. Looking around this room here, you can see a lot of energy at this point within the last hour. This room packed by both Democratic candidates, leaders, and supporters. This crowd most recently energized by two state Democratic leaders, Robert Reeves and Dan Blue. These two men painting the electoral contest coming up this November in very stark terms. Blue saying just moments ago, quote, "We are fighting the worst, most rigged gerrymandering that was ever imagined." Now, we have not heard at this point from Josh Stein and have not heard any official announcement that Stein has clinched that nomination here this evening. We'll be looking out for that. We'll bring you more details as we get them. I'll send it back to you in the studio. Dan and Lena.
Eric Miller, thank you so much. Here with Laura Leslie as we break down some of the districts. He was mentioning the redrawn maps. I think it's important we should start in one that's been redrawn twice now, and that's District 13.
District 13, absolutely. This one has been, if you're not sure if you live in 13 or not in Wake County, you're not alone. A lot of people aren't sure anymore. Anyway, this is the race that had 14 different Republican candidates, and at the moment, Kelly Daughtry has a slim lead over Fred Von Cannon and Brad Knott, Devin Barber. Those are the four front runners. However, something really important to keep in mind, the three biggest population centers in this whole district are Johnston County, the part of Wake County that includes, and then Harnett. None of those have reported yet. And so this is very, very, very early numbers. We have not seen numbers yet from where most of the people in that district live.
Things could change, and we've seen some things change in District 1 already. That's becoming a much closer race up there. This is primarily an area that's been known as being Democrats for a long time. Lori Buckhout and Sandy Smith in contention now for the Republican nomination.
Right, and as the evening started with the early mail-in ballots, we saw Lori Buckhout off to an early lead. Sandy Smith is now starting to close that gap slightly as the evening goes on. But again, when you look at where those votes are coming from, the big population centers in that district are not reporting yet. So still a lot of things could change on these races.
All right, Laura, thank you so much. We'll send things in to Mark Boyle now. He is in the live center watching much more action transform there.
Dan, good evening. Right now at 8:34, we continue to monitor down in Palm Beach. These live pictures coming in. This is the watch party there at Mar-a-Lago. We do expect to hear from former President Donald Trump very soon this evening as he continues to pick up delegates across the country. Here's where things stand right now on the national front. These candidates need 1,000 to clinch that nomination. Donald Trump right now with 391, just under 400, well ahead of Nikki Haley. He is having a huge night. And of course, Joe Biden is far far and above, taking up all of the delegate counts right now, 583 to be exact. These numbers will continue to go up as we get later and later into the evening and polls continue to close across the country. Lena and Chris, back to you.
All right, thank you, Mark. And we're also watching some other big races happening here statewide. Lieutenant governor's race, for example. On the Democrat side, we have Rachel Hunt with 77.8% of the vote, Ben Clark at 16.9% of the vote, and Mark H. Robinson with 5.3% of the vote. Now, a crowded field on the Republican side. We're talking about the top 4 candidates for the GOP. Deanna Ballard with 18.6% of the vote, Hal Weatherman with 16% of the vote, Jim O'Neill with 13.1% of the vote, and Jeffrey Elmore with 12.6% of the vote.
And again, we should say this is still very early, a lot of votes to be counted. We did want to take a look at the race for Attorney General, a big race in our state. 3 candidates on the Democratic side hoping to replace Attorney General Josh Stein. Right now, U.S. Representative Jeff Jackson with a sizable lead over Durham District Attorney Satana DeBerry and Attorney Tim Dunn. So another big race we're going to be watching. On the Republican side, current U.S. Representative Dan Bishop, he's running unopposed. So he would be facing whoever the winner is there on the Democratic side. Results will be updated in real time, scrolling at the bottom of your screen and on WRAL.com throughout the evening.
And Joe Owens and Ashley Rowe will have another live update on the results as they come in right here on WRAL News Plus coming up at 9 o'clock. Now let's get it over to WRAL News Plus anchor Grace Holland with a look at some of the other headlines we're watching tonight on WRAL.
Thanks, Chris and Lena. We're following some breaking news in Wendell. Highway Patrol is on the scene of a crash with at least 4 cars. This is a picture from our WRAL breaking news tracker. You can see a car in a ditch next to an ABC store. Lots of first responders there. This is all happening along Banyan Place.